The first thing you need to know when learning about programming, and don't underestimate this as some simple concept, even though it is a simple concept, and I say don't underestimate it, because when we are hiring faculty to teach in the computer information technology department, one of the questions we asked them on a previous job interview thing when we were looking for a new faculty member is we said, can you please explain three flow control structures? And about half of the people who came and applied for the job could not. Right? And I'm not even a programmer, but I have learned in my life, just being around computers, that flow control structures is basically how you control the flow of a program. What exactly does that mean? You're looking at the three flow control structures right here. And so this is the basic starting point, learning about programming, is how do computers read programming code? Because it's one thing to write code. You could write a whole bunch of code, right? So E, A, O, E open with, there we go. So here's a whole bunch of computer code, right? And how is the computer going to read and interpret it? What is the flow through this document going to be? Well, the first thing that the computer is going to do is it's just going to read it top to bottom. And that's known as sequence. That's the sequence flow control structure. These are the three flow control structures: sequence, iteration, selection. So sequence is the default, and it reads top to bottom, just like you and I read top to bottom. And so it will continue going down top to bottom until it hits some other flow control structure. And there's two other flow control structures that it might hit. It might hit an iteration, sometimes also known as a loop. And what an iteration does is it will, so long as a condition is true, and you see the little true there, it'll continue to go through this loop. And when a condition is no longer true, right, false, it'll exit that loop and continue on with the sequence flow control structure. And so that's iteration, that's loop. And then the other flow control structure is selection. And a selection is an if-then kind of thing. If this is true, then do that. If it's not true, then do this. And then it continues on, right? And so that's those are the flow control structures. There's three of them. There's sequence right here. There's iteration, sometimes also known as loop. And there's also selection. And often you'll hear about like if-then or case. Like if it's this case, do that. If it's that case, do this. And so these are the three flow control structures: sequence, iteration, also known as loop, and selection, right? Where we have if then. If this, then do that. Otherwise, do this. So three flow control structures. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy, but the basic starting point, and something you should absolutely know, and something a lot of people didn't know, and they came to apply for a job to teach computers, interestingly. All right, the next thing you should know is about bugs. And so when we write computer code, you know, sometimes we might have bugs in our code. We might have bugs in our code. And we use the word bugs. Why do we call it a bug? Because one of the original programmers was this lady, Mary Grace Hopper. Grace Hopper, let's look her up. Grace Hopper. I think her first name is Mary. Grace Murray Hopper, that's where I'm getting that. And Grace Hopper is an American computer scientist in the United States Navy Rear Admiral, pioneer in the field. She was one of the first programmers of the Harvard Mark I computer. 1906 to 1992 is when she lived. And yeah, so she was one of the first programmers back in the days, and like the 40s and the 50s, I'm guessing. Anyhow, pretty extraordinary woman who broke a lot of barriers and, you know, had a big professional life career and got her doctorate, I believe, earned a PhD in mathematics at Yale in 1934 when she was like 28. So a real go-getter back in the day when a lot of women weren't in the workforce, and a real barrier breaker. Cool woman to know about. Anyhow, this is a posting from a journal entry where she was working on a computer. I don't know what year this was, probably the 40s. It'd be cool if we could see the year. Here we go. 1947, first computer bug. And so back in the day, computers had vacuum tubes in them, right? That's how they kept track of the on-off state, the zeros and ones. And those vacuum tubes were warm. They were warm, and so that, you know, warm like heat, right? And so they attracted moths. And moths like to fly into computers because they were nice and warm. And then the moths would like land on the vacuum tubes and burn out the vacuum tube. And so you'd have to go in and take all the moths, all the bugs out of the computer. And so this was the first bug found in a computer, and she put a piece of tape over it. Relay number 70, panel F, moth in relay. First actual case of bug being found, right? So the first bug in a computer, and that's where we get the phrase bugging, debugging a computer. Let's debug the computer. Let's get the bugs out of it, right? And it kind of means that you're getting, today, of course, literally in computer code, there aren't bugs in here, but not literal bugs, but there could be bugs like, if I left off this, that would be a bug because I left something off right there. And so I'd have to come in and fix that. Or if I left off, that semicolon, right there, I would have to fix that. So that would be debugging the computer. And when we have errors in computers, there are two types of errors which we could have. And I'm going to bring this up here, actually, under bugs, because that's the more logical place to talk about it. We could have logic errors, and we could have syntax errors. So a syntax error would be like, I left off a piece of syntax, like that semicolon. That would be a syntax error. Or I left off a closing bracket. That would be a syntax error. A logic error would be like if I was trying to create a program to add something up. So let me just add a new sheet here. This will add up your two numbers, right? Number 1, number 2, adding them up, right? So I can't spell number, but whatever. There we go. So if I enter a number here, 15, and I enter another number here, 30, I'm going to write a little program to add up those two numbers equals to this one plus that one. And you'll notice I just made a logic error, right? Because I'm like, what? That's not 15 plus 30. That's 15 plus 30 should be 45, and I got 450. What's 2 plus 3? That's not 2 plus 3. So that's a logic error. The program is working. The program's working, but it's giving me the wrong answer. The logic isn't correct. And the reason the logic's not correct here is because I put a multiplication sign instead of a plus sign. And so there we go. Now it's working. So I got rid of that logic error. I could also have a syntax error here where, I might have a minus sign instead of an equal sign, in which case this doesn't make any sense. It's not computing anything, right? Because I have a syntax error. I need an equal sign there to start out my formula, not a minus sign. So that's all not for you to have to learn about spreadsheets, which you should already know, by the way. I'm going to get rid of this one. Delete, goodbye. I just added an extra one there. That's all not to teach you about spreadsheets, but to teach you about logic errors and syntax errors. And so when we debug a computer, we're looking for these logic errors and syntax errors to fix them. And so when you're creating programs, there'll be programming environments that you can use to help you find logic errors and syntax errors. And I've never used this one here, which is Sublime, and I've never used Notepad, right? But I don't know if it would show me errors. Not showing me the error there. What about if I just take off my body? Get rid of that. So now it turned kind of red there, So they have some syntax there because I didn't quite get that correct, whereas now that's no longer red. Or maybe that's just highlighting wherever I'm at, whatever tag I'm at. That's what that's doing. But there's probably some way in here where I could say, hey, point out my errors, and it would help me find my errors and fix them. Anyhow, so you have software to help you do that. All right, so that's flow control structures, bugs, logic errors, and syntax errors. And those are all also things which you need to know about when learning about programming.